gonna turn off the waiting room.
Oh, here's Gary. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
Good to see some familiar names.
Let's see.
Should I unmute myself? I mean mute.
Oh, you can if you want to. Yeah. We'll probably, yeah, if you want to. Hey, everybody. Hello. Hey, Karen. Hey. Nice to see you. Hey, Russ. Hey, Gary. Maria. Hey, Carol. And Stephen and Beth and Alice. Hello.
I finally figured out that the Pollinator Network meetings are on Tuesday and the pesticide reduction meetings are on Thursday. It only took me several months to figure this out.
Well, in your defense, the Pollinator Network meeting, like in the fall of 2021, did move around, so it wasn't always on a Tuesday.
I know. Well, thank you for giving me a little bit of.
It was not you, but now, yeah, let's try to settle on a day so that it's easy to remember. All right. We're gonna give a couple more minutes because there are several other people who should be here, including Hannah, who's giving an update shortly.
Can I just ask a question while you're waiting?
Sure.
Have you run into any towns that are trying to decide on an approach between, say, Doug Ptolemy's homegrown national park versus pollinator pathways versus, some other approach? Or are you just aware of ones that are doing, more of a pollinator?
Yeah, I mean, folks in the room could probably comment too, but there are sort of different levels of organization. So, we have pollinator pathway groups that are pretty organized in that way, and they're kind of using that model. I also find that a lot of towns, I don't know that they're citing Doug Ptolemy in particular, but they just have folks who are interested in, installing various kinds of pollinator habitat. In fact, I was just this morning met up with Mass DOT, someone from Mass DOT up in Gloucester, because I live in Salem, and there's a local group that's going to be taking over a roundabout there. So I think it varies a lot, the level of organization. And I do hear people sort of invoking Doug Ptolemy, but not always. I also am encountering people who are doing pollinator work who are not necessarily familiar with him. So,
well, my question is primarily, what is the most appealing to the widest group of citizens if you're trying to get people engaged across a town? Is it pollinator because they like butterflies, bees, and birds, or kind of a home?
Oh, did Maria freeze, or is it me? Maria, I think you froze, if you can hear me. Oh, are you back?
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know, just a blip, internet blip.
It says my internet connection is unstable. At least it didn't say you're unstable.
I'm familiar with that Zoom alert. Yeah, honestly, I think that's a broad topic of conversation that probably everyone in the room, may have an opinion on. So I guess I'm not going to say there's one clear answer to that, but
okay.
Yeah, perhaps we can add it to our agenda for a discussion at a subsequent meeting. So
Okay.
rather than moving to breakout rooms, we can have a chat about that. It's a great question, and I'm going to add it to my notes. All right. Can't do two things at once. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our April meeting. I'm so happy to see everybody here. And yeah, we have an agenda for today, and I'll just go over kind of what our format is going to be. But in case anyone is here for the first time, I just realized I didn't change my name. My name is Rosemary Malaby. I am the Pollinator Network Coordinator at NOFA, Mass. And if you are here for the first time, can you just like a little emoji hand or actual hand? Alice, Beth, Giancarla, Lisa, hey Hannah. All right, wonderful. Okay, so we have some folks here for the first time. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been here before, the purpose of these meetings is for people from across the entire state to get together and keep each other updated on things that are happening in our communities, and also to exchange knowledge and ideas. And I see that, oh, that was just, I'm new. Okay, that was an I'm new hand. And that's sort of in a nutshell what this meeting is about. So what we're going to do today, I know it varies a little bit week or month to month. I'm just going to go over some general updates for the network. If you have an update that you want everyone to know about, feel free to put that in the chat so that we can see it now. And then when we save the chat, we can look back to it later. After we do some updates at the beginning here, we're going to move into small groups, breakout rooms, just to have conversations with each other. And then I'm going to turn it over to our guest presenter tonight, which is Giancarla Kalpas from the Native Pollinator Task Force from Metrowest. I'm really very excited to hear from you and to hear what Metrowest has been up to. Oh, thank you so much, Mary Jo. I forgot to do that when I entered the room. Okay, live transcript should be enabled now. All right, wonderful. Okay, so the first sort of order of business I wanted to go over was our nursery outreach campaign. We've talked about this at a couple of different meetings, and I just wanted to give everyone kind of a sense for where things are. It's very exciting. We have about 20 to 25 nurseries and plant cells at last count that are participating in our nursery outreach campaign. And these are happening in different parts of the state. So we have the Pioneer Valley, the Hill Towns. We also have some nurseries out in Eastern Mass and the Boston area that are participating. We do have a list that's going to go up on our website so folks can check that out. And people have been really enthusiastic about receiving our labels, which for folks who may not be familiar with the campaign, they mark native plants. So the whole idea of the campaign is to help improve the visibility of native plants in nurseries, and also to communicate to nursery owners that there's a greater demand for native plants. When we had a discussion about this maybe a few meetings ago, people in this group felt very strongly that cultivars should not be, like nativars should not be permitted, should not be included in the plants that are allowed to have a label. And we listened to that feedback. So the plant lists that folks have do not include cultivars. There are just 3 that are permitted, and that's because there is specific evidence showing that they are supportive of pollinators. I'm going to drop a link into the chat for folks that shows you the native plant list that's being distributed to those nurseries. And that was put together by our steering committee member, Heidi Dollard, who's not here tonight, but I'm sure she'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Hey, where did we land on the definition? Is it east of the Mississippi River, or is it New England, or?
Northeast. So we went with a broader definition of the Northeast. So not necessarily specifically New England, but the Northeast. And I did talk to a couple of the native plant growers who come to our groups on occasion to kind of get a sense for what they felt like was a reasonable balance. But yeah, if you have thoughts about that, like please look at the list, and I would like to continue to get everybody's input and feedback on that. Okay, so that is one thing I wanted to discuss, and then I also want to let you know that we have officially launched our new website. There's still content that I'm trying to get up there, but it is up. So now when you go to masspollinatornetwork.org, the new website will appear. And you can also reach it directly through the link that I'm dropping into the chat. So you can check out the new website. We are having a problem. I did some update to a plugin, and now the mobile menu isn't showing up. So I'm going to be working with our comms team to figure out how to bring that back. So stay tuned for that fix. But yes, please give me your feedback also on the website. If there's something you want to see there, if you notice a typo, really anything, feel free to just email me at rosemary@nofamass.org and let me know what you think. And then finally, we have NOMO May coming up. It is the end of April, which means it's almost May. So NOMO May is a time when we encourage people not to mow your lawn, or at least a piece of your lawn, to allow things to flower, to benefit pollinators at this time of year in the early season. And if you are doing a No Mow May campaign in your town, please let me know. I'd love to promote the fact that you're doing that. And if you are, please just drop it in the chat. You can also send me an email. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Hannah to talk about the Western Mass volunteer calendar that has also just been launched.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. It's great to see such a nice turnout. My name is Hannah McDonald. I live in Western Massachusetts in Greenfield in the Connecticut River Valley. And I am I have a couple of different groups going on, just to give you some context as to where I'm, how I'm joining you today. So I organize a group called the Western Massachusetts Regenerative Food System, which I will post a link in the chat, where we look at food system dynamics and think about connecting the dots and letting regenerative food systems emerge, which is housed by NOFAMAS, which is how I know and collaborate with Rosemary. And we, the Western Massachusetts Regenerative Food System, are collaborating with a group called Local Harmony. Perhaps a couple of you are familiar with Owen Wormser. He wrote a book called Lawns into Meadows, and is a really well-known landscaper in Western Massachusetts. He and I are collaborating on a stewardship calendar, which I will post in the chat. So I have two links right there. One is stewardshipwesternmass.org, and then the other one is the Western Mass Regenerative Food System website. And the Stewardship Western Mass calendar is really cool. Rosemary and I thought it would be a good idea to bring it to you all tonight to kind of give you two options. One would be either to be someone who's interested in posting. This is specifically for folks in Western Mass right now, but the goal is to potentially try to expand it and see if there's other people in different parts of Massachusetts or by regions or counties. All of that is TBD. But to try to create this self-generating open source platform where I, as the coordinator, give people access to this Google Calendar, and with their Gmail, they can just make a calendar for a calendar day invite link posting for an event that they're having, the description, and it's just like all things stewardship, right? So if you are having a big garden cleanup day, if you are, working on your public trail, if you are having a big harvest party in your garden, many hands make light work. The goal is just to engage folks and give everyone the opportunity to participate. And I know there's lots of people passionate about pollination and gardening here. And so if you have any questions or are interested in this in the Western Massachusetts area, and you want to either be a poster or somebody who attends events, or if you're interested in possibly being a node on the calendar platform, which is not developed right now, but the more I know about what folks want, the more I can help to coordinate that. So I'll put my email in the chat, both my NOFAMAS and my stewardship email. And thanks so much for having me. Any questions?
Well,
Cool.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for going over that. I think it's just been an amazing resource. I know in this group, it's come up a number of times. It's a persistent issue, trying to find volunteers for projects. It's hard. So I hope that this really takes off as a place where everyone knows that they can post their events, and also, if you're interested in volunteering, it's a place where you know that you can go look for those kinds of opportunities. And I do also, we have been talking about other parts of the state and launching something similar. Those conversations are happening. If you are in Central or Eastern Mass and have an interest in participating in expanding the calendar, please reach out to Hannah or me, and we'd love to include you in that conversation. Awesome. All right, thank you. Okay, so those are my relatively quick updates. Again, if you have anything that you want to share with the whole network, feel free to drop that into the chat so everyone can see your comment or announcement. And now I think for the next like 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to go into smaller breakout groups so we can just get to know each other. So when you're there, offer your name, your pronouns, where you're calling in from. And if you have a group affiliation, feel free to let everyone know that too. And then you could discuss a couple of things. One is, a project that you're working on in your town, a problem that you're potentially facing related to pollinator work. Or a third topic could be a resource that you hope to see on the Mass Pollinator Network website, something that you've been looking for and that you feel like would be really helpful. All right, so with that, I'm going to send people to breakout rooms. Okay, I think this is the right number. Here we go. I am opening the rooms. Hopefully everyone sees a room. And there should be about 4 or 5 people in your room, so make sure everyone has a chance to chime in. Hey, Anna, are you there?
Yes.
What's up?
Just came in.
How you doing? Okay, 17. Hi, Elena. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I
Hi.
missed the first part of the presentation, so I think I'm not going to be very useful.
No, you're all all good. We just went into breakout rooms. But
Yeah, I'm primarily, I can just talk to you quickly.
sure.
Yeah, I'm primarily interested in starting a pollinator garden in Cambridge,
Oh, nice.
next to the high school. We have a spot laid out, and yeah, so I don't know if you offer consulting services or if you're anywhere near Cambridge. I don't know.
Yeah, is this your first time coming to a meeting?
It is. I think so. Well, no, I've probably been to a few on, entomology ones.
Oh, like our seminar?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm a beekeeper as well, so
Great.
yeah.
I'm hearing myself. Is it coming from,
Oh, I'm sorry. This is me.
is it
Okay,
you?
this must be better now. Okay, right?
Okay. I was like, I'm hearing myself. Yeah, so we, I would say we sort of indirectly offer consulting services, in that, we have this network of people who are very interested in this topic and have, varying levels of experience building pollinator habitat. So depending on exactly what you need, we can put you in touch with somebody who'd be able to consult on that. And if you're in Cambridge, we do have folks in the eastern part of the
Yeah,
state.
in fact, I'm doing this with someone who is very, very involved with your network, Amy Meltzer. You may know her.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I think we're covered. She
I was
just
gonna say, Amy, you've got Amy.
and I'm also a landscape architect, so I think we're in pretty good shape. But I don't know if there's if you know anyone else who would like to be involved in the Cambridge area.
Oh, okay. Yes, of course. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would like to do that. Elizabeth, just checking in with you. Do you want to be dropped into a breakout room to chat with folks for a few minutes? It's also okay if you want to hang here. Have 4.
Are you doing a breakout room now? Is that what it is?
Yeah, we're in small groups.
What is
having-
it? What is the talking? What is it about?
It's very general. It's just introductions, talking about a project you're working on or an obstacle you're facing related to pollinator work, or a resource that you've been thinking about that you'd like to see on the website. It's kind of those are the prompts that I gave as
Okay.
possibilities. Yeah.
I had something I wanted to talk to Heidi about. Is she on the call?
She's not on tonight. She's at
Okay. Okay, I'll just call her. I'll write to her.
okay.
I think I'll skip it actually. I'll just
Yeah,
call
no,
her.
no worries. Yeah. And then we're coming back together in like 8 to 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll be here.
Yeah, but well, because we want to come back together ahead of 7:30, because we're going to turn it over to our guest presenters at that time.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. But yeah, assuredly, we have people who would want to get involved. If you are you part of our Google group?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. So that if you email me, I can email our Google group, or you can sign up for our Google group. Let me go to, I'm gonna find the link for that.
That's okay. You can just give me your email if that's okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
might be easier. Yeah.
2 things. Okay. My email is, I'm just gonna put in the chat,
Okay, sure.
rosemary@nofamass.org. And then this is the sign up link for the Google group.
Let's see, Rosemary. Why am I not seeing it? Just like I'm in the chat. Oh, okay. Yeah, at NovaMass.org. Yeah. And where are you located?
Myself, I'm located in Salem,
In Salem?
Massachusetts. Yeah, in Salem.
Oh, okay.
Mass. Yeah. So not so far.
Great. So there's a presenter tonight. You said in a few minutes.
Yeah. Yep. We're going to turn it over to the Native Pollinator Task Force. They are based in the Metrowest area, and they are going to talk about a few things they have going on, including their ambassador program, which is a pretty cool concept that I hope would take off elsewhere. Yeah, I'm excited to hear.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, it'll be good to follow their footsteps.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I have a pollinator garden in my yard, and I keep mason bees as well as honeybees.
Oh, nice.
But it's different. Introducing this in a very public landscape. So.
Right. Yeah. Right. So you have the honeybees and mason bees in Cambridge? You're in Cambridge?
Yeah, right in the middle of Cambridge. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. So
that's amazing. Yeah, and we have some other. I was just trying to think of the best way to, yeah, depending, anyway, if you email me, I can also email we have it's a little topic adjacent, but we have a community pesticide reduction network too. There's like a lot of there's a lot of overlap there, but
Yeah, of course.
also
Yeah,
some
yeah,
separate
yeah.
folks. And I know at least, yeah, Ginger Ryan, who does, I don't know if you know her, she's,
I know Ginger, sure.
oh yeah. So I would say Ginger probably knows other folks who'd want to get involved.
Okay, well, that's
too.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, small world.
Yeah, I mean, it should be larger, you know, in a way.
That's that's a good point.
You know, it's like, I just wish there were more environmentalists, but what can you do?
Yes, I know.
So I'll come back. You think in about 5 minutes?
Yeah,
I'll
maybe
come
like
within-
4 minutes. I'm gonna see if I can check in with a couple people and
Okay, sure. Okay,
see how
I'll
it's
be
going.
back. Thank you. Nice to meet you, and I will.
Nice to
email
meet you too.
Take care, Rosemary.
We needed more time in our group.
I know that is the difficult part. Well, I hope you all had a chance to maybe meet somebody new or have a helpful conversation. I know 10 to 15 minutes is not, you just probably tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot to talk about. But one thing that you can always do is try and connect with someone also outside of the meeting. So you could, get an email address, or you can always reach out to me to try to contact somebody so that you can, reconnect with the people that you were talking with. And I encourage that. All right. With that, I am going to turn things over to our guest presenter, but also a couple other folks here who are part of this group. I'm very excited to hear from Giancarla Kalpas, who is part of the Metrowest Native Pollinator Task Force. And I know there are at least a couple other people here, including Karen, who are also part of that task force. And I think many folks in the room are probably already familiar with them. They do, and Laura, you are also here. Hi, Laura. They're doing some really amazing things, and they've been at this for a while. And I thought it would be really great to highlight the various things that they've been working on. I think they're a great model for community efforts that bring people together and that focus on pollinators. And Gary, I know you are also part of this effort, so shout out to Gary too. All right, I will turn it over to you, Giancarla. Do you still have screen sharing capability? Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
All right, so I'm Giancarla Kalpas. I live in Chelmsford. I am an ambassador for Chelmsford for a year. I've been that, and I recently joined the Native Pollinator Task Force as well. I was sharing in the little group that I'm kind of worried. I feel like I'll be preaching to the choir, but maybe you learn what we're doing in our area of the state. So you see in this map where we are located. We are in the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord River watershed. It's a 36 town area. And the Sudbury Valley is the regional land trust that preserves open space land and manages it. And they also have a collaboration with different entities like municipalities and other local land trusts for managing and for stewardship of these properties. The Sudbury Valley trustees, I'm not sure about the timing, but maybe about a dozen years ago, they started the MCA, the Metrowest. The Metrowest Conservation Alliance is all these groups together, but more recently, the MCA has given birth, let's say, to the Native Pollinator Task Force. And their purpose is to preserve and restore native pollination systems. Oops, now how do I, I'm stuck. How do I go to the next slide?
This is sometimes tricky. If you go back to the window where the presentation is to.
Okay, why doesn't it do it this way?
You can try hovering over your mouse over like the lower left. Yeah, the lower left, there's an arrow. Try that.
Lower left. Oh, here.
Yeah, right there. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Oh.
So again, this is just what I have already said, that the goal, okay, the MCA has created the Native Pollinators Task Force. And what our goal is to have a public display pollination preservation garden. I get stuck with all these words. It's like a tongue twister in each of these 36 communities. And we want to save the native pollinators. And to do that, we must restore the system. So we need to create the habitat and the plants for the diversity that we want to maintain. Okay, now I know where to go. So I was looking, but so wait a minute, let's go back. The scientists have told us that to save the native bees, we need to save the native plants. And so, again, that is what we're trying to do. But I was looking online for a food web that showed pollinators, and there is no such, at least I couldn't find it. They're showing us grass and plants, but how are the plants going to produce seeds if there are no pollinators? So the pollinators are the matchmakers for the plants. They make it possible for seed and fruit to be produced, and that will feed the first level of consumers, and they will feed the carnivores. If we lose our pollination systems, the whole website is going to collapse, and it will be like Armageddon. It will be the end of nature. It's just, for me, it has become an imperative to get informed and to do something about my little world to try to help with this situation. I found this picture, and to me, it says so much. And as I drive around, I see neighbors crazy about their perfect green lawn. And first of all, the turf grass is not native. To be perfect, to have this perfect green monoculture, you need to poison it, you need to fertilize it, you need to apply herbicide, pesticides, and all these chemicals don't stay where you put them. When you do all that watering, which is also another big waste of resources, the water will carry these poisons further downstream, and that is so detrimental. It will damage the pollinators, the birds, all, and all the things that we want to preserve. So one of my goals in my yard is reduce the lawn. First of all, my lawn is not like this. My lawn is all weeds and all different kind of things. We don't put any of the chemicals, we don't water it, we just cut it when we think about it. And we shrink it, constantly make it smaller and smaller. Let me see. So it is very important to preserve these pollination systems. It is just essential that we do it. So to become an ambassador, you need to become informed what are the native bees that are at risk. They could become extinct if they don't have the native plants with which they have co-evolved over millions of years. And in a specific area, I know that in the higher elevation, there is a different species that is of concern, but here for us, it is Bombus fervidus and Bombus vagans. And we follow the science of Dr. Jagir, who is a UMass professor. He has been researching what are the needs of these bees that the numbers have declined so much. So our message is not just to plant for pollinators, because if we just plant any generic labeled pollinator plant, we could end up helping some of the bees that really don't need our help because their numbers have been increasing lately. So we are focusing on these plants in Dr. Jagir's list because these are the bees that need our help the most. So to be an ambassador, you have to be familiar with Dr. Jagir's science. You have to have attended. I know that you have had him recently on your webinar. I watched it. So you need to have attended one of his presentations, whether you in person or there are many of the recordings available. So it's great. If you're looking for what plants to plant, they're right here on his website. And this is what I used when I planted my garden last year. It tells you what plants provide the pollen, which is needed, to feed the larvae, which plants are needed for nectar. And you need to, and it shows in the purple columns here, which of the bumblebees are helped, or if it is other bees, and there are plants for butterflies, host plants. So you'll have all the plants you need, and that is what we stress in our, okay, now I do go back. Now that I went on the website. Okay, here I'm back. So this is our main resource. We follow the science of Dr. Jagir. So once you have made up your mind and you put your heart in this plan that you want to help the native bees and the butterflies that are at risk, you'll need to find a location where you could put this public display pollination garden. You need to provide flowering plants from March to October. And here we have the example of the pussy willow, which is one of the first to bloom and provides pollen very early in the season. And then everything in between here and the showy goldenrod that I have pictured here, and those bloom towards the end of the season. You need to have, I believe that guidelines are to have 3 different species blooming at any time in the growing season. And in the list, like I said before, are plants, host plants and nectar for butterflies and moths. Another thing that we do in our gardens is to provide nesting sites and hibernation sites, and that would be bare ground, because they believe that that is where some of the bees nest. And when you clean your garden, and don't clean it too early, leave some of the stems, or all of the stems, but you can cut them shorter. And you don't need to bring a ruler. I just use my body. They say 18 inches, and I know from the ground to my knees 18 inches. So that is how I cut the stems to provide for nesting sites. You don't need to build bee hotels. Just leave the stems. You will not need to sterilize them or put bleach on them to clean them for the next season. Nature will take care of that. So you will need to look for support in your community to help you. You cannot do it by yourself. In my case, I had the support of the local land trust. They gave me generously grant money for the plants, most of the plants, and for the fencing. I also had the support of a local open space group. They provided with a lot of volunteers that helped, the preparation of the site, the installation of the fence, the planting of the plants, and also some of the equipment. You'll see it later on in one of the pictures. But I know that in other towns, ambassadors have installed gardens at libraries and schools and churches, etc. And in some cases, garden clubs. Even though I'm kind of hesitant with garden clubs, because I noticed that some of them are into the exotic plants and the perfect lawns, but some of them are listening to the message of native pollinators too. So they could be allies in our projects. Here I'm showing you some example of public display pollination preservation gardens that have been installed. The first picture on the left is the Southborough Library. You'll see that as they are planting the plants. The second one is a Breakneck Hill Conservation Land, also in Southborough. And I would like to mention that Freddie Gillespie is the ambassador for Southborough. She was one of the founding members of the Native Pollination Task Force and was until recently the chairperson. The next picture is from the British School in Lincoln. This is when they were having their tour last year. And here the ambassador is Jane Gruber Chevalier. And the last picture is my garden in Chelmsford. at the Sunny Meadow Farm, which is a town-owned land, which mostly is used for agriculture, leased to several small farmers, but they allowed me to use some of the grassy area for this garden. You will notice all these flags. And many times when people walk by my garden, and you see them also in Southborough, people say, what are you doing with those flags? Why do you grow flags? And I explained that I copied the idea from Jane, who, this is the method. You make your plans, you designate each species of plants with a number, and you put the flag with that number in the spot where you want to volunteer to put the plants. So it's just planting by the number. And so you open your card, people get the plant, look at the number, they match it to a flag, and they put the plant in place. And it went by so quickly. In just a couple of hours, we planted the whole garden. So on our website, which is very kindly is donated to us, the location by the SVT, Sudbury Valley Trustees, this is where you'll find all the information, all the resources for accomplishing one of these gardens. Or there are links to Dr. Jugia's presentations, there are plant lists. Again, where do we find these plants? So there is a list here that somebody has prepared where it goes either by plant or by nursery. It tells you which plants are available. We stress very strongly that only native species and not cultivars, because we know some cultivars are even sterile, or maybe they have a more showy flower, but they don't have the nutrients that the native bees need. And of course, no neonics. They are very damaging to the bees, and we don't want them in the garden. So the next step is to design your garden, prepare the ground, and plant. And for some of us, it might seem like a daunting endeavor, but don't be concerned. You can do it. Also, as an ambassador, you will tell anybody who will walk by or is willing to listen, you tell them what you're doing. Like sometimes I'm working in the garden there at Sunny Meadow, and people go by and walk, they walk their dog, they go for a stroll, and they ask me, what are you doing here? And just, I tell them, as long as you're willing to listen, I'll tell them what I'm doing. You need to recruit people to help you with the planting, the weeding, the watering. There's lots of work to do. And also let people know where to find the information, where to find the list of plants, and encourage anybody that wants to know about this to plant the native plants in their yards, because that is actually the final goal, that to have people pull out their, hostas and daylilies and all the other things we've been putting and putting the native plants that have the native bees and really build up the ecosystem. One thing that I've done this year, since I had the plants for the first planted last year, they bloomed and they had seeds in the fall. I harvested some of the seeds and I shared them for free here in town, and we've done the winter sow. And so that is a great way to make these plants, which could be rare in some cases to find to people. We also have regular meetings on webinars. So we have a chance, like you're doing here, to share with other ambassadors, with people who are thinking of becoming ambassadors. And so we share what we're up to. And so like I was telling you before, if you feel like, oh, this is too overwhelming, I cannot do it. Why am I showing you this? Well, a few years ago, I decided I want to have a frog pond. And after having an estimate for $8,000 for somebody to build it for us, I said, okay, I'll do it. And I started digging. And I made the hole, and I made it bigger and wider and deeper. I went down 3 feet, put the liners, put all the plants, and look at that, the frogs came. So I have the same attitude with the with the endangered bees. Okay, if I put the right plants, if I create the habitat, they have to come. So don't wait, start digging. You want to have a garden? You need all kinds of holes, small holes, big holes. And here in our project, we had some big tools. We were putting in, besides the herbaceous plants, we had several shrubs. And so this volunteer said, oh, I can bring. And he came with this digging machine and he made some nice large holes. And then we put some compost and good soil in the holes. And it's amazing. This year, I go back as often as I can and things are growing. The the Virginia rose, I had put 2 bushes and now they have already spread and made lots of babies. And so it's just amazing to see, except for the milkweeds. There are different varieties of milkweeds that we planted that have not given signs of life yet. Everything else is growing. So if you plant it, they have to come. So this is, I believe, this is the end of my presentation. And we can take questions, Karen and Laura and Gary, who are ambassadors for the Native Pollination Task Force. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
hope I said
Giancarla.
everything I meant to say, but
I think you did a wonderful job, Giancarla. It's always, it just amazes me every time and inspires me. Not only your accomplishment, but your attitude, it's just wonderful. The only thing I have to add is we're hoping, as the Native Pollinator Task Force, to recruit an ambassador in every one of our 36 communities who will somehow manage to put in a native pollinator garden. And then eventually, as we convert folks to this new way of gardening, these functional gardens, that they will go and plant them in their own gardens. We're hoping for a whole host of backyard gardens.
how many ambassadors do we have so far? 14, you said? 14 communities?
I think it's 13 or 14. I think we list 14, but the 14th, excuse me, has not yet committed. So,
and we're actively recruiting in the towns that don't have currently ambassadors. We will be contacting potential ambassadors, see if they need a little push, a little convincing.
yeah. Yeah, we are actively recruiting, and in that line of thinking, we're going to be having June garden tours, and hopefully we'll have some gardens that we visited in the past, so folks can see that even though maybe they went the first time and it wasn't exactly, amazing because maybe they grew little plugs or whatever, they can see the evolution of these plants and the evolution of the garden. But also we plan to have some new folks on the garden tours to inspire people with different designs. And we're trying to do one of these gardens in Marlborough. We have had a longer path than Giancarla, quite a bit longer, 2 years. But we're moving forward and hopefully have a garden tour in Marlborough this June.
Rosemary, would you be interested if we share with you our garden tours, the program?
Yes.
Okay, we should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're open to, I don't know how, if there's like a limit to how many people can be on the tour, but I'd love to go. And I'm sure others within reach of the Metrowest area would be interested too.
Okay.
We'll definitely let you know.
Awesome. Sounds great. So for the preservation gardens, are there specific parameters that have to be met for each of those gardens?
Yes, so the suggestion from Dr. Jigia that you need to have a square meter of each species.
Of each one, okay.
That would give, the visiting pollinator enough resources in that, in a close range. And then you need to have 3 species blooming at all times. So you have to cover that whole spectrum of growing season, and pollen and nectar provided also. So
And it's also meant to be, I forget the number, 15 species, 20 species, something like that
Total,
total.
total.
Yeah, yeah, from March to October.
I mean, if you
Right.
count that 8 months and 3 species per month, it becomes 24. But some species bloom longer than just a month. So I mean, but the important thing is to pick those plants, not any generic pollinator plants.
Right.
You know, like the bombus impatiens, those numbers have increased a lot over the historical records. So they don't need our help. We need to help the bees with the long tongue. And so they require those.
Those particular plants.
Yeah.
And I saw a couple answers in here, but someone was asking about sourcing the plants. And I know that some of them in particular have been hard to find. Do you propagate them through those seed swaps? Is that a major source for your community for those like?
Well, but
harder to find?
initially, first we had to buy the plants. Okay, and then when they bloom, then you can harvest the seeds and share them. So the first step, at least for me, it was to buy the plants. And I had to drive east and west and north and south to fill in my palette of plants that I needed.
So it did. So it took sourcing them from a number of different places.
Yes,
to,
like
yeah.
4 or 5 different places, yes.
Yep.
You will not be able to go down to the local nursery and find all the plants you need.
Right. That's a challenge.
So it's a little commitment, yes.
Yeah. And I see that winter sow projects are becoming more common as well. In Southborough, Freddie had one, or has had multiple ones, and Gary in Northborough has done the same, and you've led webinars to instruct other folks.
Yeah, big knowledge sharing. What I learned from Freddie last year, I did probably 6 different workshops, mostly Zoom, and passed out 2,000, personally made 2,000 propagation containers from milk jugs, and gave those out, free soil, free seed, to whoever would take them in these 6 or 7 workshops.
That is wonderful.
And
That is wonderful.
3 of the workshops paid me $100, and I used that to buy the soil.
You made a lot of money, Gary.
Well, I probably spent $500 in the soil.
Maria asked, do the plants have to be planted all together, or can they be spread out around a large yard? So do they need to be kind of in a concentrated area, or can you have these less densely planted? Is there a suggestion?
There is criteria. I think it's within quarter mile, something like that. So you can take credit to the pussy willow that's over there by the water. Doesn't have to be in your garden, just has to be nearby.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, Gary. I've heard the number 1,900 feet that they forage in that distance, so it's similar.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
don't have just one plant of a species.
Right.
You need to have, like I said, a square meter, which is about 10 square feet. But the thing is that, and I noticed that, in my garden, you don't need to have a square meter all planted when you start your garden, because the plants are spreading, like the obedient. The obedient plant, I brought 2 plants and now it's taking over everything. And the monardas, they are spreading also a lot. So, when you start, you don't need to have thousands of plants. Prunella, same thing. I'm going to share some prunella with Karen because, they spread. So, well, of course, you have the problem with the worms, but, shake the soil or something. So,
And though we hope that the new public display gardens will, almost have all these characteristics at the start, we also want to get out the message that having a transition garden is great. Like, we don't want to scare homeowners into thinking, my goodness, I have to, take everything out and just, put all these plants in. That's a little overwhelming. So we like to get the message out that this is the ultimate goal, but if you start to plant some of these things, you're on a great path to getting to where you need to be to support these pollinators. And, get a plant, as Giancarla says, just get a plant in the ground, and that'll hopefully start you on a really good path.
Yeah, that's such an important message too, because yeah, it can be intimidating to think about having to have this perfect thing. And yeah, just that one step will lead you hopefully to the next step. So,
Yeah.
I moved into our current place just a little over a year ago, and I haven't had much time to do things with our lawn. And I did that. I just got like 5 plants in the ground, and some of them took off, and then I'll add some more this year, and it will take me down the path.
That's right. You'll become a convert.
That's right. And hopefully my neighbors too. Carol asked, how can you find out which cultivars are okay? I have cultivars that I purchased before I knew that they were not as good for pollinators. That is a tough question. I don't know if you all have thoughts about that. I know that Annie White's research is, like, as far as I know, she is the person who's studying this. There may be a few others. And I think the work that she's done points to like a few of them, some of them being okay for pollinators. I don't know, I could say a lot about like the metrics that we use to assess how good a cultivar is. Because there's attractiveness, and then there's also what the rewards actually provide. But I believe her most recent research was actually measuring something like nectar content. And she found that a few of them were, good for pollinators, meaning they were just as good as the wild type or better in a few random cases. So that's the evidence that I believe that we were using for our list. But does anyone know if she has like a simple publicly available list that you don't have to dig through like a manuscript article to find? Does anyone know that?
I haven't seen anything like that. You had mentioned that there were 3 that you were going to be sharing with us that were supported by research that they do provide the nectar or the pollen.
Yes, I put now I've lost the link. I put the link in the
Oh,
chat, but let me see if I can find it again so you don't have to dig back through to get it.
may I answer the question about the lawn microclover? Now, I don't know if microclover is a native. I know one plant that is suggested for a lawn is the prunella vulgaris. That is one of the plants suggested. Some people also use strawberries, the native ones. And of course, my favorite is violets. My yard is blooming now, it's purple.
I like the idea of the strawberry lawn. Tasty. Maria just offered a comment about microclover. Yeah, so I just put the plant list in again, and if you comb through there, I think they're noted with numbers. It's like a little footnote, and I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Heidi how those cultivars were were flagged, I'll inquire and I can let you know, Karen. Great. Are there other questions that folks have?
I think I have a question to pose to the group.
Yeah.
Something I've encountered quite often, because we're down there preparing the site, and we get folks stopping by to say, you know, what's happening, and we tell them, and we're trying to encourage bees. And I'm getting a lot more of the, oh my heavens, you're trying to encourage bees, you know, sentiment. A lot more than I think I've heard recently for some reason. So, you know, you try to talk about that they're really not that, they're very shy, really. They're not going, and Heather Holm has a whole lot of good information about that actually in her book. But I was wondering if folks have encountered that and have some good responses.
I have. They're worried about hornets, you know, the yellow jackets that are aggressive.
Can I just throw something in there? So kind of because I wanted to know more, I'm studying melitology through Oregon State University and getting a certified in melitology study of bees. And basically the aggressive bees are the hive bees, honeybees, which are non-native imported. And because they're a hive bee, they have disposable members in the hive. Native bees, solitary bees, because they're not group bees, are far less aggressive and rarely, if ever, sting, as well as bumblebees, which are also solitary bees. So really, when you're talking about stinging bees, you're talking about honeybees. Solitary bees are, and almost all species of wasps, if you leave alone their nest sites, are not aggressive either. It's when you are assertive around a nesting site that they would become a problem or feel like you're being aggressive with them. So you can very easily, you know, sort of talk about the difference between honeybees and solitary bees. And solitary bees are pretty passive.
Yes, I would like to add, I watched a webinar recently from the Ohio State University about native bees, and they said, yes, they rarely sting, the native bees. And if they do, there is no medically proven allergy to the native.
Yeah.
Even if you get stung, you will not get an allergic response. So
yeah, you will go into anaphylactic shock with a native bee.
Right.
Well, yeah, I know from lots of personal experience that the little you know solitary bees, if you manage to get stung by them, which is extremely difficult, like the sweat bees, if you're really out in like high meadow, occasionally will land on you to like lick up the salt, and if you squish one in your elbow, it'll sting you. But you're right, I mean it's such a small little dose that like it doesn't really produce much of a reaction. But bumblebees, I mean they can pack a wallop, but again, like they will not bother you unless you're by their nesting site or if you actively harass one.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, Maria, yep.
I have heard that honeybees will take over because they're a hive bee, and they will take over a territory and outcompete native bees, and that you really don't want to encourage beekeeping except in agricultural areas. So it's just so odd that so many homeowners are beekeeping and they're honeybees, and it doesn't sound like that's a really good thing.
It's not even that they outcompete, they're very aggressive to solitary bees, and they will literally force them out of territories.
Right.
So,
yeah,
they're not a good thing. And the reason that we have all the hives is that they use them agriculturally because they use so many chemicals to kill, herbicides, pesticides.
no, I know that, but
there's nothing left. Right. There's
suburbanites
nothing left
are,
to pollinate in big agricultural processes. So they bring in hive bees. And I think it's just education. People just don't know about solitary bees versus honeybees and hive bees.
I know, but it's a problem, I think, because people think they're doing this great thing
Yeah.
in suburban areas to have, you know, honeybee
Honeybees.
hives.
Yeah. Not.
I keep honeybees, and I also have mason bee houses, and I haven't seen any competition between the two. I have plenty of bumblebees and honeybees and solitary bees. So
There are more species that are sort of more subtle solitary bees, though, that would be intimidated by a hive bee that you may not get.
But the fact that I've kept honeybees for so many years has encouraged me to plant lots of pollinators.
Right,
So,
which is great.
Sort of the gateway insect to becoming a pollinator gardener.
I feel like there's just the distinction for me, my sort of perspective on this is the just thinking about sort of like why you're keeping bees, and is your reason because you want honey? Do you find them fascinating? Is it something that's culturally important to you? Or are you doing it because you think it's the way to, save bee populations, right? And I think that's the second one, where there's a misperception that adding honeybee hives to a landscape is solving that problem, right? So I think that's the piece of it where we kind of want to dispel, that notion. I feel like framing it that way is a kind of a productive way of talking about it. That's just me, though. I don't know if other people feel that way.
I agree totally.
Yeah, I do as well. And I think that'll be part of the challenge for the ambassadors, is to get that message out that, it really does matter which bees we're supporting. And also to be sure to get the message out that this is a system. These are pollination systems. You need the plant, you need the bee needs the plant, etc. They've co-evolved, and that's very different from honeybees and the relationship of honeybees to plants.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure other people do this too. I talk about those bees like Bombus firbitus as like picky eaters, right? Like I have some of those in my own home, so I talk about them like picky eaters. So Bombus impatiens, also a native bumblebee, it's a super generalist, right? Like it's going to be fine kind of no matter what you put out there. But these other bees, that's just not true for them. Like they're not. It's like my 8-year-old. He will not eat just anything. It has to be certain things. And I feel like that makes intuitive sense to people, the picky eating concept.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Speaking of eating, I got a subject change. I heard recently on a Zoom that dandelions, not only are they not native, but they're not nutritious to the bees. Has anyone else heard that?
Well, they are not native yet. That's true. But as far as the nutrition, I haven't heard.
I can look into that, Gary. I know. So, dandelion pollen looks, it's morphologically very different from some of the other composite flower species. But in general, like sunflower and a lot of its relatives, the pollen is low in protein. It's like low in certain nutrients that bees need. So I don't know if I don't know if it's related to that body of research, but I'll let me look into. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget to look into it.
I'll look back at my calendar to tell you, and I'll let you know which who said it. It was a Zoom I did in the last week, so I'll let you know who it was, and maybe you can.
Yeah, let me know, and I can look into that.
Can I chime in on that? They're non-native. It's a Eurasian plant that was imported on the Mayflower.
Yep.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't
It is
understand.
you're native of Eurasia, and they believe it was imported on the Mayflower dandelions. However, I have heard that they are a viable nectar source early in the spring. So
That's
could
what
be
I've
another.
heard too. So it
Yeah,
would be
but
great
not
to
native.
clarify it.
Yeah, but they're definitely not native, but doesn't mean they don't have some nectar value.
Yeah.
I want
Uh,
to know because I want to know if I should keep them in my yard or get rid of them in my yard.
yeah. I feel like it's that, it's actually just like what Karen was talking about. It's like that sort of, I don't know if you want to call it like hierarchical or sort of stepwise way of thinking about the actions that we take, right? So if you have a lawn, like having weeds like a dandelion or clover is like better than turf grass. But if you can manage to like take that out and put in a different kind of ground cover, then like that's better. So it's just, you know, there are these different sort of levels of actions that we can take. So I feel like a dandelion is better than grass, but if you could get your prunella going, then like that would be better probably than dandelions. Ginny, I see your hand up.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just Googled dandelions not beneficial to pollinators, and it says, I don't see the source here, but it says dandelions lack vital amino acids and nutrients that bees need. They simply are not a quality food source for bees.
Oh.
So,
Interesting.
But
yeah.
that at this time of year, there's really not much blooming.
Yeah.
There are some trees blooming. But
We just all have to plant a lot of willows, Giancarla.
Many willows and
Many
maples.
willows.
Now, I have also heard that you have to, that there are male willows and female willows, and
Right.
one has good something for some time and the other one has, and I can't even tell what mine is.
oh yeah, you can learn how to tell them apart.
I looked online and I still can't tell.
Well,
We can share some pictures with you.
Yeah.
We have a member who educated himself and took some beautiful pictures.
Oh, that would be
So
fabulous.
I'll send it along to Rosemary and we'll share those.
Okay, that would be great because I only have one and you know, I don't know what it's doing. And it wasn't labeled when I bought it. I bought it at Native Plant Trust.
Well,
You know,
folks who are in the business could correct me, but someone just told me at Bigelow Nursery in Northborough, I guess it is, that it's not industry standard to sex the willows. That's not you won't typically go to a nursery and find them labeled.
well, so well,
So I
that's too
bought
bad.
2 and I don't know what they are, but
Yeah,
now
okay.
that they've flowered and we have the resource that Mark gave us, I know what they are. So
That's interesting.
We'll share.
Yeah, well, it would be helpful to know. And is there a way when you go to a nursery, when they're not blooming, for example, that you can tell what sex they are?
I
No.
heard that nurseries sell the males because they're the showy ones, and the females, they don't. The male has the pollen and the nectar, the female doesn't, and they just don't sell that one. But it's not good to have only males out, because if something happens to the males and they all die, but the females don't, and you don't have them around, it's not good diversity.
Huh. So I have probably a male, and that's good for food
pollen.
source, but
Pollen.
it's not resilient.
It's not, yeah, or not good for propagation, right? You want-
I don't think it has to do with propagation. It's just not good, you know, in case something happens to the
Well, why
males.
wouldn't I just get 2 males then?
Because if you get some infection or whatever and they both die, then you don't have a pussy willow anymore.
Okay.
Oh, Alan was just put an interesting excerpt from that paper in the chat, by the way, just about dandelions and no mow May. Thank you, Alan, for finding that.
You're
But
welcome.
for the willows, if you are able to identify the male and the female plants, then you could take cuttings early in the spring, put them in a jar of water, they will root, and you will have all the plants you want. They're easy to propagate. But they need to be blooming for you to know what you have. But once you learn how, it is so easy to recognize, because the males, they have the filaments, and at the top, I had the picture in my presentation of at the top of the filaments, you have the pollen. So it's a fluffy thing with all the yellow or orange pollen on the outside of the catkin. The female does not have the pollen, but if you look inside, there is a swelling, which is the future seed. And that is the female, those are the female flowers.
Well, we are at 8:20, so we're actually a little over time. I do want to respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing about what the task force is up to. I feel like we could talk all night, honestly. This is very fun. It's very exciting, the ambassador program. I feel very inspired by that, and I hope that it's a model for other towns. I'm very excited to see where it goes. It's just it's a fantastic idea. We are meeting again, obviously again next month in May, at the end of May. And our next guest presenter is here tonight, is Vivian Orlowski, and we'll be talking about Operation Pollination, which is out in Great Barrington with the Housatonic Heritage. So stay tuned. That's going to be a great share as well. So thank you everyone so much for being here. If you're trying to connect with anyone, if you didn't, it was like a misconnection, just please email me and I can email the group and try to get you connected with who you were talking to. Okay.
I have a question, Rosemary. If I save the chat, where do I find it?
Right. Yes. Hold on a second. So when I save it, it says show in folder. So if you click that, it should take you to the folder where it went. Does that happen for you?
Oh yeah, show in folder, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yes. Okay.
I think for me, it shows up in my downloads folder, but I don't know, computers are mysterious.
Okay.
The
All
whole
right.
virtual world is mysterious.
Indeed. I'll stick with the bees. All right, thank you everybody. Great to see you.
Right.
And see you next month.
Right.
Bye.